I just remember being, a new teacher and feeling like I just wish people would let me teach. I just wish they would shut up and let me teach. My little room of, at that time, 15 fourth grade students quickly showed me that I was not ready. I was not prepared, that all the schooling that I had gone to does not prepare you for your first few days in the classroom. One of the first lessons I learned really quickly was just because, kids might look like you doesn't mean you share a cultural background. You don't have that connection. Because when I got into the classroom, as I say, with those 15 fourth graders, I was like, where do they act like this at, And when a student writes something that's really great and powerful, but they're too shy to, speak it or repeat it for the class, then my comment was always, well, then can I read it? Because this needs to be heard, right? And so they would say, really? And I'm like, yeah, this needs to be heard. It's for the good of the room. So I would read it for them on the mic. And then the next time, I would say, hey, well, why don't you read it and I'll stand beside you? And that kid would read it. And then finally it would get to the point where I'd say, hey, you read it and I'll just stand over here to the side. But my goal was always for all the kids to take the mic. And I never had a year in 14 years in the classroom where a student wouldn't eventually take the microphone and speak and present their own work.
If you were to go back and give your first year teacher self some advice, what would it be?
What I really like to tell teachers, and probably what would have made life a lot less stressful for me as a first year teacher, is to
shut up and let me teach. That's Chandra, I had to do it. So today, we have Miss Chandra Shaw, and we are going to talk about teacher autonomy and how people just need to shut up and let us teach. I'm not typically the guy that uses that kind of language, but in a second, you'll understand why. I'm Daryl Williams Jr., and welcome to New Teacher Big Impact, the podcast, where we help new teachers have a big impact on student achievement data without burning out, without feeling unsupported, and without changing who they are. And today I have with me Miss Chandra Shaw, who is a phenomenal speaker who you get to meet in just a second. She has more than 24 years of experience in education as a teacher, a reading specialist, instructional coach, and her famous TEDx talk, Shut Up and Let Me Teach, is the reason why she's across from me here today. Chandra, how are you doing today?
Doing just fine. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You're welcome. Full transparency. This is a couple of firsts for me in the podcast. It is the first time that I'm actually interviewing somebody who I don't have a professional relationship with. It is the first time that it's not somebody in my close network. We connected via social media. And it's also the first time that it's virtual, as you can see. So let us know in the comments how this setup works for you. We know that virtual kind of unlocks us to be able to meet with amazing people. Because none of my friends wrote TEDx speeches. Like none of my friends are doing the things that you're doing in education. So I'm glad to connect with you.
I'm glad to be here. And like I say, I love anytime I can talk about education, I'm here for it.
Let's do it. So, we have to dive into it right away. The shut up and let me talk, or shut up and let me teach. Sorry. Tell us where the name came from first, and then let's dive into what the content's about.
Well, as a teacher, I just noticed that many times we felt like, I think most teachers are rule followers, right? And so we want to follow the rules. And sometimes administrators who are very gung-ho about signing us up for all the initiatives that the district has coming down the pipeline without ever taking anything off of our plate. Oftentimes they will, fill up most of our time with things that have nothing to do with teaching. And so I just remember being, a new teacher and feeling like I just wish people would let me teach. I just wish they would shut up and let me teach. Don't give me another initiative. Don't sign me up for anything else. Just let me teach. And so that's kind of where that name came from. I just felt like my autonomy was just being assaulted because I wasn't getting to do what I came into the profession thinking that I was going to get to do.
Yeah. Did you think that you had the skills already?
As a new teacher, absolutely. I did not have the skills I don't want to give that impression. I didn't have the skills at
Yeah.
all. I quickly learned that. My little room of, at that time, 15 fourth grade students quickly showed me that I was not ready. I was not prepared, that all the schooling that I had gone to does not prepare you for your first few days in the classroom. So it's not that I felt like I had the skills already, but I was
Yeah.
definitely willing to learn.
Got you. Okay. Because yeah, so when you're saying, shut up and let me teach, I'm thinking, I'm listening to it from my lens. I've been in education for 10 years now. And when I transitioned from from Huntsville, Alabama to Charlotte, North Carolina, it was my fourth year teaching. And although I wasn't as aggressive as you know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Like I wasn't like, "Yo, shut up, let me teach." Like, I was that aggressive, but I came to I always say the fourth year teaching was my second worst year. First year was my worst. Fourth year was my second worst because everything was new. It was a new city, new students, new curriculum, new grade level that I was teaching, new coworkers. But I was teacher of the year for the first time my third year teaching, which is my last year in Alabama. So when I came to North Carolina, I had already 1 year of being teacher of the year under my belt. But when they put me in professional development, they were putting me in like rudimentary professional development because they were saying, you're new to Charlotte, you have to learn classroom management, you have to learn this, you have to learn that. So I kind of know that stuff already. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And it was just I was frustrated because I wanted to be allowed to do the things that I had seen be successful in the past, but I felt stifled by what you're saying, district saying you got to do this, that cookie cutter approach.
Absolutely. And actually, the shut up and let me teach has a double meaning because during my first year of teaching, it was actually in reference to what I probably wanted to say to my kids and what I actually did say to them one day
Oh,
as
tell me.
they were
Yeah.
driving me crazy with classroom because I didn't have the classroom management skills. So I always tell teachers, those first 3 years, you're just trying to survive for the most part, just trying to keep your head above water, trying to manage the classroom. But actually, yeah, it has a double meaning. So that first year definitely applied to my students. I need y'all to shut up and let me teach. uh, just being frustrated and not knowing how to actually manage a classroom. But then, like, as you said, about that fourth, fifth year, you get into your groove and then it becomes, I need the administrators to shut up and let me teach and let me do the things that I now know how to do.
Got you. So where does that learning happen? Like, where does it come from? You said about year 4 or 5, you kind of get into your groove. How do you, is it just learning on the job? How do you get into the groove?
Well, I was fortunate enough to have some really good professional development opportunities, right? I knew right away coming out of college, or I thought I knew what I was going to do as far as, teaching. I had always wanted to be a teacher. As a young child, I would line up my teddy bears on the couch in the den and I would teach those teddy bears. I would ask my teachers at the end of the year for all of those extra worksheets and I would bring those home. And during the summer, I would hold my own classroom with my teddy bears and my little sister. So she got to be my first live student.
Oh, wow.
So I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And I knew that I wanted to help students who looked like me, who were at risk students, like I happened to be, having, coming from a single parent household, not by choice or anything like that, but because my mother passed away when I was 12, right? And then so my father is left raising 5 girls on his own. Um,
Wow.
yeah. So when I graduated college, I knew I was going to go work with kids in Title I schools. I knew that, but I ended up going and working in a large urban district. And I'm from a
Oh,
small country East Texas town. And so one of the first lessons I learned really quickly was just because, kids might look like you doesn't mean you share a cultural background. You don't have that connection. Because when I got into the classroom, as I say, with those 15 fourth graders, I was like, where do they act like this at? I was not used to, walking past each other and wanting to fight just because someone looked at them the
mhm.
wrong way or getting up out of their seat just so they could intentionally go around and poke at someone or hit someone.
Right,
That
right,
wasn't how I was raised. And so I learned pretty quickly that even though we looked alike, yeah, I didn't have the same culture as the kids I was teaching. So that was my first big lesson.
And that actually happened to me too, just like that. I didn't grow up in the sticks like you said. You said you grew up in the sticks,
I,
right?
I did not say the sticks. I said I grew up in a small East Texas town. How dare you?
Sorry.
But it was country. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh,
When I left, they went out and changed the sign from population 1099 to 1098, but not the sticks. Okay.
yeah.
All
Okay,
right.
I'm sorry. But no, I grew up in a booming city, if you would. And I grew up in New York. I grew up in one of the five boroughs, Staten Island. But I was, I always say that what was going on in my zip code wasn't going on in my household. So there was a lot of going on in the zip code, but my parents never let me become a part of that. It's actually part of the keynote that I talk about. Talking about my upbringing and how I was sheltered and things like that. Because when I was in school, I was an outcast because I was so different. You know, I was like too black for the white kids, but I was too white for the black kids, and I was just everything. I just felt like I never fit in. But transitioning into teaching, similar to you, I went to a Title I school right out of college, and it was one of those situations where everybody was saying, we need more black male educators, we need more black educators, we need more. The students didn't seem to think that. The students didn't, they didn't care. So I remember coming up on the scene, and they just, I'm thinking, like other people would tell me, because you're a black male, you get more respect. And it just wasn't the case.
Right.
And I thought, they were still, if honestly, it felt like middle school all over again, because they were talking about songs that I didn't connect with. They were talking about rappers, and they were talking about music videos, TV shows, and just pop culture things that I didn't resonate with. And just because I looked like them, I wasn't able to connect with them like I thought I would, just because
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, you learn really quickly that those kids, they're great kids once you break through the code, right? But they don't respect you simply because you have a title or simply because you're grown and older than them. You actually have to earn the respect. And again, that was very different than my upbringing, because I was used to, you do what your mother and father say, and there is no fighting. And if you embarrass me at school, you're going to get it when you get home. And that just wasn't the case for my kiddos. I might call home and get a good cursing out from, one of the parents for bothering them, and like, that's your problem. You're with them at school. And so I quickly had to learn what to do as far as classroom management, because they weren't going to just obey me because of my title and I was older than them.
Got you. And now, in the role that you're in now, you coach teachers around essentially what kind of principles?
So right now, I coach teachers mainly on literacy and best practices in literacy. So research-based strategies when it comes to literacy, trying to make sure that teachers are holding high expectations for all students, trying to convince people that, look, I'm telling you, all kids are capable of brilliance. You just got to do what's needed in order to bring that brilliance out of them. And that's difficult now, especially after COVID. And a lot of people are saying that the kids are different, but I don't necessarily think the teachers are also willing to admit that we are different after COVID. I'm different after COVID,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are some of the differences that you're seeing?
Personally, when I go into classrooms, I don't see a lot of differences in the kids. I mean, to me, they still act the same way. When I go in and do a demonstration lesson, the kids still do really well for me, but I go in and I establish my norms. As far as when I say different myself, it's just that now I will take a personal day off. Whereas before, when you first start out teaching, the people who are your mentors, they are the folks that never took a day off. They're there when they're sick, and that's kind of what was drummed into my head that I needed to do in order to be the best teacher. But now, having gone through COVID and, lost some people that were close to me, I know that it's important to take care of yourself. And it's absolutely okay to take a day when you need that day, not just because you want to or anything like that. But if, it's okay to take the day and not go in sick.
Yeah. And I would even say sometimes if you want to, in most school, anywhere that I've been, there's been about 10 PTO days over the course of a school year. Some were aggregated throughout the year. Some you were given all 10 up front, but essentially it's like 10. And my thing is if you have days, use them. Like that's just, I've always been that person though. My mom, she is, she's a counselor. She taught for, I don't want to be lying, maybe 21 years or something like that. But her thing is she's banking up her days for her retirement.
Yeah.
And we always make fun, we always make fun of her because like we tried to go on a family vacation. And I think we had that Friday off and we told her to take the Thursday so we can have like that third, a long weekend. And she was like, well, I can't take the days off. It was like, well, actually, because then I'm using a PTO day. I have to work that day. We're like, well, use the day. Like that. That's what it's
Yes.
there for.
Well, your mom sounds like she was probably raised, during my time where that's the way it was. Like you don't take days off if you don't absolutely need them. But now I definitely understand, teachers need to have that personal day, just to decompress and all that kind of stuff, because I do know that teaching is hard. I tell people all the time, like it's a hard job, but it's also the most rewarding job. It's a job that you go in every day and you know that you are needed. Or at least that's how I always felt, that I was needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. What if I told you that the principles that are being taught in this video could be taught to your school community live and in person? Well, the answer is yes. I'm Daryl Williams Jr., and you know that I'm on a mission to help 1 million students be able to live the life that they choose, not the life they're forced to settle for. And I do that by empowering new teachers to have a big impact on student achievement data without burning out, without feeling unsupported, and without changing who they are. So if there's a message that I can empower your students, your staff, your school community with, I would love to pop up in person and make that happen and provide massive value for your school community. Check the link in the description below to fill out a booking form, and somebody from the team will get back to you about how we can work together. So I want to get into some literacy strategies, the best practices, because that seems like your bag. And I know we have some people that are listening that are literacy. Well, we always said I was a math teacher, but we always said that literacy is the foundation of every subject. And I'm sure you can support that. So definitely would like to hear some literacy strategies. But I have a hot take that I want to see if you agree with me or not. You do not have to agree with me.
Oh, I know this. Look, I'm not one of those folks. I'm always going to tell you what I think. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So when we were talking about what's different since the pandemic, here's the hot take that I have based on what I saw, what I've been coaching other teachers on. When we're talking about student behaviors post-pandemic, the thing that I'm thinking is the behaviors that we were seeing in Title I schools before the pandemic are the things that we were building up or fortifying to be able to manage, like classroom management and things like that. The same school that you were describing, the same school that I was describing, those Title I schools, those same kind of like issues that we were seeing pre-pandemic, those are some of the things that the other schools are now seeing post-pandemic. Because I think during the pandemic, we started to see like apathy, and we started to see like students realizing that, man, if I don't do this work, I still get promoted, like that kind of mindset, so to speak. So some of the things that we are seeing in the schools that didn't necessarily have a lot of behavior issues are the things that were existing in Title I schools prior to the pandemic. Now they're just like also happening in other schools. So a lot of the things that are like the strategies that we have that were working in Title I schools and are now kind of working in traditional schools as well. What do you think?
I can believe that to a certain extent. It's just that when I go in school, I see the same kids that I had, and they have many of the same behaviors. Again, even when I've gone into schools that weren't those Title I schools, I actually saw the same behaviors that were in the Title I schools, but for whatever reason, when it's in the Title I school, I don't know, we categorize it as something worse than it actually is. Like I've seen kids in those schools that aren't Title I refuse to put away their phones. The only problem is that in a Title I school, that would be escalated to the SRO coming in and challenging the kid or something like that. But in this school, that didn't happen. So I've seen those same things. So I don't know. For me, I've been around and seen it in different, I guess, environments. And to me, it seems like it's a lot of the same. I think it's probably more of it because the kids were not as socialized because they were at home by themselves or with their siblings. And at home with your siblings, what goes there does not go in the classroom, so I can see why it's a little bit of that for sure, what you just mentioned. But also, I think the fact that people just aren't prepared to deal with those behaviors. And certainly maybe some of the teachers who are in schools that aren't Title I definitely probably aren't used to dealing with those behaviors. So I can see that it would definitely be a little bit of both of those things for sure.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to get your take because you sound like you've been in a lot of different schools.
A lot of
So I wanted
different
to
schools, a lot of different classrooms. And that's why I learned pretty quickly. I'm like, hey, these kids are acting the same way my Title One kids did. It's just that in the Title One schools, you got people hollering at them and stuff. And then over here,
Yep.
it's not that way. It's, oh, Johnny's just being assertive. But in the Title One school, this student is being aggressive or having an attitude. It's how we frame them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Which is crazy because then it goes back to expectations, and a
absolutely.
lot of times students are going to rise to the expectation, whatever the expectation is that you set.
Absolutely. And that's the truth. And I like to say they will rise or fall to whatever expectations you have. And unfortunately, a lot of times, when you have a teacher who isn't of the same culture, or who doesn't necessarily have the same high expectations or beliefs in students' capabilities, what you end up having is either the teacher who pities kids into low expectations. I see a lot of that as well. Um,
Mhm.
Feeling bad for the kid because maybe they come from a certain zip code, or, they only have one parent in the household or something like that. When really, we should treat all kids, like I say, like they are capable of brilliance. And that's what
Yeah.
I learned to do pretty quickly, but due to some
Yeah.
good professional development.
That's your second time mentioning good professional development. So we
Absolutely.
definitely have to hit that because I want to find more about that. But if possible, is there a key that you could give us? Because the key that you can give us based on what you were just saying about somebody who may be of a different culture. Because as I'm listening and I'm thinking about the listeners and thinking about the community, you know, uh, in terms of schools, the black population is about 13%, of all of the students in schools. Black teachers are like 11% or something like that of all teachers in school. Black male teachers like 2%. And I think black female teachers like 8%. So we're like 8, 10, 11% of all teachers, which means the majority of teachers that they're going to encounter don't look anything like them. I do have my stance on it, which I believe that you do not have to look like the students that you are empowering. In order to empower them, goes back to relationships, like you were saying, the belief that all students can learn. But do you have some strategies or your thoughts on what if we're in a different culture and like I'm trying to connect with these students that don't necessarily look like me?
Well, one, I say to all teachers, you have to go with the structure that your kids need. What I've found is that when teachers don't have the same cultures as the kids that they are instructing or teaching, sometimes it might be just personal implicit bias that they are not aware of, that they are holding or harboring low expectations for the kids. And then sometimes it's just the fact that like I said, teachers they pity the kids into low expectations. So when it comes to not having the same culture as your kids, the first is just belief that all kids are capable of brilliance. Next is making sure that you understand that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that if a kid's basic needs aren't being met, then that's going to affect the way that kid performs for you in the classroom. And so I'm truly a believer that you've got to use everything you've ever learned in life to help you teach the kids who are in front of you. And so if you know that those basic needs have to be met, then as a teacher, I kept snacks on me. I made sure that my kids knew that I loved them and cared for them and wanted the best for them. I can honestly say I wanted the same thing for my kids as I wanted for my own biological children. And they
So
knew and sometimes I don't necessarily feel some teachers actually can honestly say they want the same for the kids that they're teaching as they do for their own biological kids.
yeah, I can see that. And it's funny that you mentioned that because that's actually the first principle of effective instruction. I coach on the 6 principles of effective instruction, and the first one is the encourage principle, because students need to first believe that they can do it before they actually even try. And all students have to have a belief that if it is possible, they are capable. And effective teachers are able to communicate that to any student, to let them know that if what I'm asking you to do, or if what I'm giving you to do, or if what is being set before you is possible, I need you to know that you are capable to make it happen. And that some teachers skip over that piece and they just get to, I want to give the content, I want to give the information, I want to give you the knowledge, but completely overlooking the fact that some students sitting in your class don't even believe that they can do it.
Absolutely. And they've been told that they can't do it. I mean, and
Yep.
that's what people don't understand. Like some kids are actually told, and by the time they get to you in, upper elementary, they definitely understand and know if they
Yeah.
are part of the struggling group, or some teachers call them the low group. Like
The
they know it.
low.
And if you think that, if you labeling kids like that, then they know it
Yeah.
and they
That's, oh my
act
goodness.
accordingly.
I say that all the time. Like, it's not, if you know it, the bubble kids know they're bubble kids. The low kids know they're
Absolutely.
low. Like, they know. And
Absolutely.
the crazy thing is, the way that learned helplessness is formed is that, first of all, there needs, so learned helplessness is when you experience failure so much that you no longer see that there's an opportunity for success. And like you're mentioning with upper elementary, by that point, I've already taken some end of grade assessments. Standardized testing starts in third grade. By that point, I've already experienced some hard things. What strengthens learned helplessness, which is not a good thing, is by actually seeing failure. So when you're being told you're not good enough, when you are now not believing in yourself that you're not good enough, and now you have a standardized test that you fail, that is proof that you're not good enough. I literally have no more reason to try.
Absolutely. I always tell kids, teachers, you need to give your kids a quick win. They need to get a win real quick. They need some success. Success is the ultimate motivator. And if you can get your kids some success from day one of school, you can hook them and you can then make
Yeah.
them be willing to try those more difficult tasks. And even when I say give them a win, I'm not saying that the work that we're going to do doesn't have any rigor to it. It's just that I'm going to scaffold it in a way so that they have access to it and they're going to feel good about it. So you had mentioned like some literacy strategies. One literacy strategy that I try to encourage everyone to utilize first before we ever talk about writing and this and that in school is to just get your kids speaking. Right now we have a assessment that for the first time, all of our teachers are required to, not that they were all supposed to be teaching writing in the first place, but this is the first time writing was on everyone's standardized test for the state. And so
Okay.
people were really freaking out about that. And so when they contacted us at my service center, everybody was saying, we need a strategy right now. We need a strategy. And my comment to them was, you don't want to start with a strategy. We're going to start with speaking and talking to students and getting them to talk and share their ideas. And so that's one of the things that you can do is just work on developing your kids' oral language. Kindergarten teachers understand that. They get it, that when your kids come to kindergarten, the one thing they can all do is talk, right? And when you ask them to, to tell a story because they can't write yet, they might tell you, for this summer, I got a dog. And so then the teacher says, well, what does that dog look like? Or what kind of dog did you get? And the kid says a golden doodle. And the teacher said, what does he look like? And, well, he's brown with big floppy ears and all this kind of stuff, right? And what do you do with that dog? But that teacher keeps questioning the kid and developing their oral language, because that teacher understands, usually K2 teachers understand, that the more details I can get you to verbalize, that's going to equal more details when you start drawing pictures. And so that kid's going to draw a golden doodle in their backyard. It's going to be brown with big floppy ears. And then that's going to lead to, when that student starts trying to write, that student's going to try to spell floppy ears and golden and swing sets. But somewhere about third grade, we just want kids to kind of sit down and be quiet in the classroom instead of teaching them that you have a voice and we need to hear it. And I'm going to show you how to share your voice and your ideas in a way where you can get what you need from this world. You can communicate your message effectively, and you can speak to anyone at any time.
Got you. That's so cool. I love that. And I love how you use the word rigor and scaffolding earlier. I love how it scaffolds up, as they're continuing to grow.
Absolutely. We start with just simple talking, and then we move into students asking and answering their own questions. My methods on teaching are all about empowering students, and that you start day one of school with the intentions of, I'm going to eventually turn this classroom over to you kids. Like right now, it's my class. Okay. I
Hmm.
want you to feel at home in this class, but the goal is I'm going to turn it over to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to instruct you and show you all the things that I need you to learn so that when I turn this class over to you, I know it's in good hands and you know you can be successful at whatever I ask you to do.
That's it. I love it. So what are some of the successes that you've seen when implementing strategies like this?
One of the successes is that kids find their voice and they're not afraid to speak. They're not afraid to get up in front of others and or enter contests. They will take risks. They will submit their papers and writing into contests because they're not afraid. They understand that they have a voice and it needs to be heard. Right now, we have a situation where a lot of people, I call it, we have the self-diagnosis epidemic right now. Everybody thinks
Okay.
they have anxiety. Everybody thinks they have, this and that.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
like most people don't, you've got to be diagnosed by a clinical, doctor in order to say that you have anxiety. For most people, it's just a natural fear of public speaking, like we all have. Um, and so I try to quickly get my kids to what I used to say is take the mic. So I would have a little karaoke microphone in the classroom because everything
Okay.
sounds better on the microphone. And as soon as possible, try to get those kids up and presenting in front of their classmates and not being afraid. And that starts with, first we might talk in small groups or we might write it's something in our journals. And when a student writes something that's really great and powerful, but they're too shy to, speak it
Mm.
or repeat it for the class, then my comment was always, well, then can I read it? Because this needs to be heard. Right.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
And so they would say, really? And I'm like, yeah, this needs to be heard. It's for the good of the room. So I would read it for them on the mic. And then the next time, I would say, hey, well, why don't you read it and I'll stand beside you? And that kid would read it.
Mm.
And then finally it would get to the point where I'd say, hey, you read it and I'll just stand over here to the side. But my goal was always for all the kids to take the mic. And I never had a year in 14 years in the classroom where a student wouldn't eventually take the microphone and speak and present their own work because they were confident and they had experienced the success and they knew this was a safe space. So we got to get our kids sharing their
Mhm.
voices.
And that's huge. That's when students can share their voice. And I love that you said that, this needs to be heard
It needs to
because
be heard.
that's
Yeah,
yeah, it's going back to the building of the confidence within them and like the overcoming of learned helplessness, you know.
absolutely. Like the kids have to believe that they are thinkers, they are writers, they are speakers, they are, again, capable of brilliance. Because I truly believe they all are. And if I can get a teacher to believe that, then that teacher's going to do amazing things with any kid or any group of
Love it.
kids. Yeah.
Yeah. So to the listener that is hearing and listening to the literacy strategies and they're saying to themselves, okay, well, I'm not a kindergarten teacher or a third grade teacher. Like it's too late. What are some things that we can do even in the upper grades, that some literacy best practices?
Well, one literacy best practice, I've already given you, get your kids speaking right away, use those discussion
Yeah.
techniques. But then two, a lot of times with ELAR literacy, a lot of people encounter students who may be in seventh or eighth grade, ninth grade, and they're reading four, five, maybe even sixth grade levels below level. So
Hmm.
what research tells us is that even those students, they need to be exposed to complex grade level text. Okay.
Really? Really?
Yes, absolutely. Past about second into maybe third grade, the effects of putting kids on level text, text that is at their level, the
Yeah.
effects of that wears off. And so what
Mm.
we need to do is to make sure that we're exposing all kids to complex grade level text, because without it, then they're not being exposed to the types of sophisticated content and vocabulary that they need to actually be successful. Think about it. If we
Mm.
keep kids always in texts that are at their level, when do they ever get challenged? When do they ever learn the type of tier two vocabulary that they need in order to be more successful on grade level text? And a lot of times they don't ever see those texts until they're the day of the test, and then that's too late. We have to show kids how to grapple with a complex text, even if you're reading below grade level. So yes, I'm saying if you have a seventh grader, they're reading on a third grade level, we're going to put a seventh grade text in front of that student, but I'm not just going to leave them there on their own to,
That's the next
to
question.
fail. I am going to scaffold that text in different ways. So I might introduce some a video clip or some a more simpler text at first, just to give them some background knowledge. Because what research tells us is that if students have background knowledge, if they have some vocabulary, about a text or about a concept, then they typically can do a lot better on that comprehension than if they didn't have that. So it goes back to old baseball study. I don't know if you've ever heard of that one. But the baseball study, oh my gosh, we are like sick of the baseball study in my state right now. But the baseball study is just a study that they gave students a comprehension assessment, right? And the comprehension assessment was over baseball, the topic of baseball. And what they found in this study is that the students who had high reading ability, meaning they could call out the words, so these students were fluent readers, and high knowledge about baseball, they did very well. They scored in like the 86th percentile. Well, that's a no-brainer. We know those kids are going to do well. If you can read and you can comprehend and you have some knowledge about it, you're going to do well. But then the second highest group in that study was students who had low reading ability, meaning these were students who were not fluent readers. These were the students who were not, didn't have the right inflection and things like that when they read. These students who struggled, but they had high knowledge about baseball.
Okay.
They came in second. And not only were they in second, I told you that first group was in the 86th percentile. That second group was in the 81st percentile. You see how close they were. They were so close to the other group, and they had low reading, but high knowledge. The third group was the group of students who had high reading ability, but little knowledge about baseball. Now, they were third, but they were like at 53%. And so what that tells us, and this is a study that's been repeated several different times with research, and similar results have come up, that especially when students get older, because that's where you're going to run into kids who might have some low reading abilities because they've missed out on some foundational reading skills. But if they have high knowledge about a world of things, right, then those students can do better on comprehension assessments. And that's what we need to focus on. Like I say, about third grade on up, that's where that the effects of putting kids in level text is going to wear off. And you don't get that. It's the law of diminishing returns. So we've got to expose those kids to complex grade level text. And again, that's hard convincing people because it kind of goes against everything you've ever heard, that no, kids need to be reading books on their level. Well, they can still do that during independent reading. But when they're working with you, the teacher, they need to be in complex grade level text because you're there to help them grapple with that text. You're going to put the scaffolds in place to make that text accessible to them. You're going to structure it so that they are, chunk that text in a way where they can stop and discuss and comprehend that text. And what research is actually telling us, and you can read through Timothy Shanahan's research, Jeff Willingham's research about the brain and how we develop and get a lot smarter, that we need to be exposing our kids to that complex grade level text. Otherwise, they're not getting the vocabulary that they need. And I think that's how we've ended up with a lot of kids who don't know how many continents we have. They think their city is a state because we've stopped teaching science and social studies to them, or we've stopped building their knowledge about things that people should have some common knowledge about.
So that speaks so much volume. And I thank you for sharing that study. I've never heard of it. You may be tired of it in Texas, but I never heard of it here.
Okay.
The fact that exposure is so huge. Full transparency, because I'm thinking about like my daughter. She's starting kindergarten this year, and I would say, so she took her readiness assessment and it was pretty average. So she can't read yet or anything like that. She can recognize all her letters and sounds, and she's starting to blend. But we were reading last night And I was like, man, I wonder if I was doing a disservice and not like having her advance. Like this is the assistant principal's daughter. She need to be reading on like a third grade level by the time she starts school, right? But to your point, like exposure wise, we have done so much, and she has so much experience knowledge
Mm-hmm.
just from like traveling and just seeing so many things and having conversations with older people type situation. Like this, she just knows so much more than a typical 4 or 5 year old. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And I think that once we add a little bit of the reading
Foundational
skill.
skills. Oh yeah, she's gonna blossom and grow. Absolutely. Now, as a, father to a early, a little toddler or whatever, you can definitely work on those foundational skills with her. And then the way you build that, the more content knowledge, you're already doing what you're supposed to do. You're exposing her, taking her to different places and talking to her about those different places. You're educated parent, that helps as well. Maybe if she experiences summer camps and things like that, taking just personal field trips with the family, that's definitely going to help her. But then also you reading books that are above her level right now and just asking her questions. So that's how the young ones, K2, are going to get that knowledge and be exposed to complex text. You, the teacher, you, the parent, you're going to read aloud to that student books that are above their level and build their knowledge. And then, like I say, you still need to work on that foundational skills. Absolutely. Especially at that K1, 2, and up to third grade level as well. But you can build that knowledge by doing exactly what you're doing, exposing her, and then reading books that are above her level, and just asking her questions. And I would say start with like science books and stuff like that. Kids love learning about animals. And you would be surprised at how much vocabulary she can build that way.
Before we get to the next point, I just have to let you know that my book, 99% Human, 1% Amazing, right now is free. All you have to do is cover the cost of shipping and I'll get it directly to you. So check the link in the description below. If you're receiving value from this video, you'll probably love the book. So I'm going to do two more things. I'm going to be selfish for a second, and then I want to circle back to the scaffolding of strategies or strategies that you use to scaffold the text. Because I feel like you were cooking in that. And then I wanted to make sure we got back there. When we were talking about somebody who may be on a 7th grade level, still exposing them to 7th grade level work, but then scaffolding them up to it. Mm-hmm. So I want to get some more strategies there. You mentioned like showing them a video beforehand. I'm just trying to jog your memory. So I want to talk more about that. But right now, I want to be a little bit selfish and ask some more questions about what I can be doing from home with my daughter. Because, we're 40 minutes in. I don't even know if anybody else is still listening. So I'm just going to be selfish and just get what I need to get from you while we're on. But so what are some things that I could be doing to prepare her? What are some resources maybe, or where can I go? Some of the things that we're doing right now, we read every night before bed, me, my wife, the 2 kids. And on Tuesdays, she reads her book to us. It is on her level. She might get a sentence or two. It takes her so long. But where can I find books and maybe find some of those higher level books, or what are some strategies we can do from home to kind of get her reading?
Okay. Well, it sounds like right now what I'm hearing that you're doing mainly is dealing with kind of the balanced literacy approach to reading. And really what we need to shift to is the science of reading approach to reading. So for a little one here, and that's a whole nother big episode that you would have to go into. It deals with the reading wars and all this kind of stuff, balanced reading versus the science of reading. But with a little one like that, then she definitely needs that foundational reading skills. So you need to work on things like phonics with her. So there are like 5 letters you can teach as a child, and they can already be reading books that they're decodable books though. So we need to switch to decodable books so that she can read those books. So if I've only learned letters like the C, the A, the T, there's a certain sequence that you can follow. I don't have those resources on me right now, but I can definitely send you something after we get off of here. But I know that you want to teach certain letters in a sequence, and then you want to expose her to some decodable books that just use those letters so she can actually read. Because right now it sounds like if you're reading a book to her and then the next day, maybe she's kind of mimicking reading that same book. Is that what's happening?
No, it's a different book,
A
but it's
different book.
just the lowest level I could find. So, just low level books,
Gotcha.
like
She needs
the
some
cat.
decodable books. Get her
Okay, cool.
decodable books, but those books need to only contain the words or that are composed of the letters that she's learned, that she knows the sounds for.
Now, the decodable books will give me, like, for example, she needs to know these letters and sounds to be able to read this book.
Some do, but I would have to, like I say, look, my wheelhouse is mainly I do third grade on up. But I've, because we've had to have reading academies in our state, I've definitely had to learn a lot more. So about phonological awareness and phonemic awareness, but it's just so much. But there is a scope and sequence that you can follow, like teach these certain levels. There are certain, influencers you can follow online that are, there's a male teacher and he works with kids, and I think he says your kindergartner can read. I'm going to look for that and I'll send you those resources.
Okay,
But there's
cool.
certain letters you want to teach your student in a certain sequence, and then your student can actually be reading books and they feel that success because they're only being exposed to letters and sounds they already know. And so that student can now sound out the words and actually read. And so that's dealing with the science of reading, where we know that 70% of kids need that phonological awareness in order to actually learn how to read. It's a myth that kids are just going to learn how to read simply by being exposed to lots of books. That's not how
Mm,
they need the phonological awareness. And that's why a lot of states have recently passed a lot of different laws,
yeah.
mandating that we have to have that science of reading, mandating that students have to be taught phonics and phonological awareness, in those early grade levels.
Okay, that's huge. Well, thank you for that. That gave me, and we'll connect offline as well
Oh,
so I can get some of those
absolutely. Yeah.
resources. Appreciate it. All right, let's take it home then. Let's those again. Situation is I have a seventh grader that's 4 grade levels below.
Yep.
You're telling me expose him to grade level text anyway, but scaffold? Tell me more.
I am saying we're going to put that seventh grade text in front of the student. But if I build some background knowledge first, if I pre-teach some vocabulary sometimes first, it just depends, then that is going to help that student to understand that text better. Now, depending on if I really want them to have the cognitive load of trying to read the text, or if I'm just focusing on the thinking that's required to discuss this text, I
Mm-hmm.
might let the kid listen to an audio of some of this text. But the idea is you're going to be exposed to the high level content, to the high level vocabulary that I need you to have as a seventh grader, because I am
Mm,
doing you a disservice if I give you a third grade book. You're never going to be exposed to the level of vocabulary that you're going to need in order to increase your comprehension. So
yeah.
one scaffold is build background knowledge first. Yes, I can do that through a video clip. But what I've done for people in my trainings is I've created like a choice menu of like 16 different things that you could do to build students' background knowledge. Video clips just seems like the easiest, but it's not just showing the clip. You got to do something with that clip. Do they discuss it? Do they
Yeah,
have
yeah,
to
yeah.
write something with it? So there's lots of ways I can do that. The second thing is then I'm going to scaffold maybe the length of the text as far as how much do they have to take in before we discuss it. So I'm going to chunk that text. So I can chunk the text. Maybe we read the first 2 or 3 paragraphs and then discuss it. Or maybe they read the first 2 or 3 paragraphs. And as a teacher, the scaffold that I've included is maybe a discussion question that I've put there for them after the first 2 paragraphs. And then they read the next chunk and I have another discussion or think question for them. So that's a couple of ways to scaffold. I can also have them do partner reading. So I remove some of the cognitive load of that student. They're not reading all of the text, but they're
Yeah.
reading chunks of the text. So maybe that student reads paragraph 1, the next student reads paragraph 2, and they discuss what the text was about up to that point, or their annotations that they put on the paper. So that's another scaffold that I can put in place for the students. So there's lots of ways I can make that text accessible to the student. That doesn't mean they're going to make a 100 on everything we do with that text. It just means it is now, I've given them access to it, and they understand that Ms. Shaw expects you to be prepared with this high level content, not something that's beneath your intelligence level and beneath your maturity level. We're going to read things that are relevant to the students. And again, that's difficult for a lot of people to understand. More and more, we'll get them to believe, sharing things like the baseball study and letting them know that this is what research says. Past about third grade, we need to be focusing a lot on those complex grade level texts so that they get the background knowledge and the vocabulary that they need to be successful.
I love it. I appreciate it. That was a lot.
It was.
And a lot of good stuff. Not a lot. No, don't say sorry. I didn't mean to say literacy, like that.
Yeah.
That's good. A lot, meaning for those that are listening, that was super helpful. That's what I mean by a lot.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I can give you, like I say, I can give you access to those choice menus that we have some activities that here are some activities that you can do. I have a little suggestion about how much time these take. That, and like I say, pre-teaching vocabulary is huge. Let me ask you this, Daryl. Do you think your listeners know how many words each year that our students are supposed to learn?
No, not all of them.
Yeah. I often ask in trainings, I ask teachers, how many words per year do you think your kids are supposed to learn? And I get these numbers like, some get creative and say 365, like one word per day. And I'm like, well, good guess, but here's the deal. From third grade on up, students need to be learning about 2,000 to 3,000 new words per year.
Wow.
And as a teacher, you can only explicitly teach about 400. So then we've got to think, well, where did those other 2,500 or so words come from? They come from us making our kids word conscious so that they know how to go out and get those words for themselves. So when they're reading a complex text, they understand, hey, this is a word I haven't seen before. How am I going to get it for myself and make this one of my 2,000 words? But as a teacher, I'm going to be modeling all the time how we learn words because I'm going to do my part and explicitly teach that 400, 500 words that year for the kiddos. But I'm going to make them word conscious. And that way, they know how to go out and get them for themselves.
That's huge. That's like the old concept of teaching them to fish first, giving them the fish.
Absolutely. Yes.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right. So you know how I like to end. You know what I like to do. Can you, if you were to go back and give your first year teacher self some advice, what would it be?
What I really like to tell teachers, and what would have made life a lot less stressful for me as a first year teacher, is to not take things personally because they're just kids.
That's true. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't believe that. Everything was directed at me.
Oh, yeah.
You cursed at me. You were mad at me. Yeah.
You're rude to me. And how dare you? And it's like, don't take it personally. They're kids. And again, use everything you've ever learned in your life about kids, which includes child development and how they develop and when the prefrontal cortex is actually developed and when it's not, and don't get in power struggles with them because that's just part of who they are at this moment.
Yeah. I love that. Well, Ms. Chandra, I appreciate you. And of course, let us know. I see that you are, according to you, you say you're an amateur YouTuber. I don't even know what that means. We're not going to claim that. You are a YouTuber, right? So I want to make sure that people know how to find, support you, figure out what it is that you're doing. Where can we find you?
I am on, I refuse to call it X. I'm on Twitter at CShawR10. So at CShawR10. That's one way you can reach me. And then just search on YouTube. My kids used to tell me that I had bars, because I do. So I say amateur because I do little rap songs using contemporary music. And I put those up and that was one of the ways I got my kids to do some studying and stuff. So
see, you should have let me know. I would have started the episode with one of the songs. See, that's the problem.
Hey, do a search for a Miss Shaw main idea song, and you'll see that's the one that's most popular. So, Miss Shaw's main idea song. Look it up.
Got you. All right. Well, Miss Shaw, I appreciate you spending time with us today. And remember, for everybody else that is listening. You heard her story. You know my story. It is possible to start off as a struggling teacher, but when you master the principles of effective instruction, not only will you improve student achievement data, but you'll actually enjoy the job that you set out to make a difference in. All right. So we appreciate you. You can be a new teacher and still have a big impact. And I'll see you in the next episode. If this school year burnt you out and you're coming back next school year, summer break isn't going to be enough to make next school year even better, because time off doesn't heal you when the issue is how you spend your time on. What will heal you is a solution to your stressors. As a former terrible teacher turned two-time teacher of the year, I've struggled with the same things that you are struggling with. Tell me if you said any of these things this year. This is too much. What is wrong with these kids? Where's my support? You don't need any more strategies that may or may not work. What you need is a comprehensive solution, one that is unique to you and your problems. And if you've watched this far, you definitely connect with the problem. So let me share the solution that helped heal me. I was able to find my teacher ID to help me avoid stress and make an impact. And now I just want to help you do the same. I can teach you how to identify your dreams so that you can live it in every block every day. I can teach you how to illuminate your differences so that you can make the impact that only you can. I can teach you how to ignore your doubters so you can fortify your mindset to know that you are strong enough to do this work. And I can teach you how to improve your data so you can deliver on the promise you made to students to help them be their best selves. All you have to do is click the link below to make next school year your best school year.